Hillary, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to speak with you and to hear more about your career transition story.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be speaking with you again, Fatima. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. And so maybe to get us started, give us your name, a little bit of introduction, and we'll move into some of the questions that we have.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Hillary Pritchard. I am an NLP data scientist, and I've been working as a data scientist for about 4 or 5 years now after I graduated from Penn.
Wow, that's awesome. So when we worked together, you were in the final stages of your graduate career. Actually, you were like within a few months of graduation and kind of completing your dissertation. So a lot is usually happening at that time, but maybe tell me, what are some of the frustrations that brought you to seeking career coaching support at that time?
Sure, absolutely. So I think frustration is definitely the word. That's what spurred me to come to the Career Center. I think at that time, it was, I was nearing the end of my program. I think I was actually just starting my dissertation. And I was finding that, well, first of all, there just weren't that many jobs in my field. And what few jobs came available every year would mean a huge move across the country with no guarantee that it would be a permanent position. So a lot of the frustration, I think, was just coming to the realization that maybe the lifestyle was not what I wanted for myself for the next few years of my life. Um, and the level of uncertainty around whether or not there was actually a career route for me that I thought there would be. So, I came to grad school straight from undergrad thinking that my career path would be kind of a straightforward, get my Ph.D., go on into academia and be a professor. And I was coming to the realization at the end of my program that maybe that wasn't so realistic, and maybe it wasn't actually what I wanted for myself or what would be a good fit for myself going forward. So there was that level of frustration and I would say a great deal of uncertainty around what the alternatives were. The program that I was in at the time was, I guess I would say, pretty traditional. It was there to train researchers to go on and be academics. And there wasn't a lot of, I would say, interest or support for exploring alternative paths after grad school. So it was a combination of, not feeling like this was maybe the best fit for me anymore and not having any departmental support for exploring other options.
One of the things that really I remember from our time when working together, and like you said, it's been over 5 years now, which I cannot believe how quickly time flies. But I just remember, you coming and accepting the challenge of coaching, right? Like as a coach, my job is to help to ask questions that help you see things from a different perspective or give you information based on things that are important to you or at least sound of interest to you. But one of the biggest things is challenging people to get out of their comfort zone. And you took the challenge, like you accepted the challenge. And so maybe say a little bit about how coaching challenged you out of your comfort zone and some ways that you activated out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, honestly, even just starting coaching was
Mm.
getting out of my comfort zone. So taking that first step was, it felt like a big leap, but I would say, you know, there were a lot of aspects that challenged me outside of my comfort zone. And I feel like a lot of the way that I was able to do that and kind of take on that challenge was really just having you as support. I felt like I could do this because you were in my corner. You were supporting me.
Oh,
So
thank you. You had
yeah,
such great components to work with too. It made it super easy.
well, I think that was probably true. And one of the biggest things you helped me with was being able to see that, being able to get through some of the frustration and kind of disillusionment that I came in with and see what I had to work with and what was out there that was available. But yeah, some of the kind of specific ways that I remember coaching kind of challenging me to get out of my comfort zone. One of the biggest ones early on in our process was, I remember you suggested that I should try to do some informational interviews with other
Mm,
graduates of the program who had not necessarily taken kind of straightforward academic path,
mm-hmm.
just to get in touch with people who had been where I was and see what they were doing now and how they got there. And I remember when you first suggested that as like kind of an assignment for coaching, I was terrified. That was just the most terrifying thing I could think of doing, was going and cold calling a stranger and asking them, to talk about themselves, because that it feels like kind of a big ask, right? When you
Yeah.
don't know somebody, to say, "Hey, you don't know me, but would you sit down and tell me your life story and how you got where you are as a successful individual now?" So that was a huge step outside my comfort zone for sure. I think that um, what you did that was so great to make me feel comfortable doing that was really just kind of giving me a blueprint for what that
Mm,
kind of conversation looks like. So it wasn't just this sort of nebulous, oh, what do I say? What do I even ask? How do I approach this person? But really giving me concrete tips for, here's what this looks like. Here are the questions you can ask. Here are the kind of things you might hear back. And really just kind of normalizing it, letting me know that like this probably isn't going to be a surprise to those people that you reach out to. They probably do this all
mm,
the time. It's not such a big deal. Don't worry about it.
yeah. Wow. Um, you got a chance to also see your skill set in a new way. And I think this for me is like a magical part of the work. Can you say a little bit about how you began to see your skill set with fresh eyes and how you did that? Like, what did you do to get to seeing your skill set differently?
That is such a great question. So I think that one of the challenges in approaching that is that as an academic, oftentimes you kind of, it's easy to sort of equate yourself with the kind of research that you do,
Mm,
and to think of skills as more of a means to an end, the end being your research goal, right? So, for example, one thing that I spent a lot of time doing as a grad student was taking raw data and turning it into graphs that would go into a paper. And you don't really think of that necessarily as a skill when you're doing it. It's just, yeah, well, that's how you present your research. That's how you summarize
mhm.
your results to give a presentation or to, write a journal article. Um, but, kind of, I think at some point in the process, I probably sat down and sort of listed out what are all the things that go into the objects that I produce as an academic, whether it's a
Mhm.
conference presentation or a research article, um, and really sort of itemize like, okay, what are all the
Yeah.
pieces? What are all the steps that I had to do to get to that goal? And then I think you probably helps me make the connection that, okay, just that piece of being able to take raw numbers and turn that into a visualization that communicates something larger, that in itself is a skill that's really
Yes.
valuable outside of academia.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine you probably see that even in your work now, like being able to take complex information and figure out what's the story we tell about this. It's a huge help. So when you first came into the office and I think I asked something like, because I like to ask vision questions, kind of where you see yourself on the other side of this. Once you have the job, what are you looking for, and kind of lifestyle and also salary. Sometimes that's the first time people hear that question, like, what would you like to earn on the other side of this? And what does life look like, right? I kind of remember some of the things that you shared with me, but maybe if you could say, what did you expect, or what was your level of expectation of what was possible for you um, in your first applied job outside of your graduate degree?
Oh, wow. Oh, honestly, I think when I first came in, I probably had no idea what to expect,
Mm. Mhm.
either in terms of the role itself or what kind of salary I could expect for that role. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, again, one of the biggest reasons that I started doing coaching with you was that I had so little understanding of what options were out there, what I might be a good fit for, and what I could reasonably expect. Um, Yeah, I think we did spend a little bit of time looking at things like higher education administration, maybe some more researchy roles. But yeah, when I came in, I had no idea what those kind of roles might pay. I was hoping for at least more than what I was making as a grad student.
Right, right.
But beyond that, I really had no idea what to
Yeah.
shoot for.
Yeah. And so over the process of you getting kind of out of that comfort zone, doing these informational interviews, and even the data science boot camp that you did, can you tell me like maybe how some of these components helped you to see a different level of expectation for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I think especially you mentioned the data science boot camp. That was definitely very important, obviously, for the eventual role that I would take or eventual path I would take after coaching. But a lot of that, the focus of that boot camp, there was a lot of like listening to representatives from different companies talk about the roles that are available, and I think a good deal of education on like what different kinds of roles were available within data science and kind of how they compared in terms of, both demand in the market for that type of role and what kind of salary expectations might come with it. So I think that boot camp was definitely useful for sort of level setting my expectations. Okay, if this is a path that I take forward, what can I expect there, and what's reasonable to ask for given the skill set and experience that I have.
Yeah. You know, one thing too, we didn't say this earlier, but one of the things I really appreciated about the action steps that you took was you just kept coming back to like build on the information that you got. Right. So it was informational interviews. Okay, I've learned this. Now I'm shifting or I'm refining my ideas. And they just kept refining as you kept going. And so I often, when I tell your story on college campuses, when I'm presenting, I talk about how, you with this commute into New York to go to this data science boot camp and this intensive experience, doing it by yourself, right? It wasn't like you were in a cohort of people. You really had to take the initiative to do this and to put yourself in an environment where you weren't sure what kind of information you would get. I mean, of course, you saw what they purported to deliver, but it was still, I don't know if I fit in this room. I'm not sure who's going to be there, all of these
Yeah.
unknowns. And you still kept moving forward. And I just have to say that because I don't think the process works without both of those pieces.
Yeah, for sure. I think, in a lot of ways, that was my goal for taking that step and doing the boot camp. Was I sort of saw it as a trial run to test out whether or not this could be a good career for me, whether, I was actually interested in taking this direction. And if I hadn't taken that step, maybe I would have gotten lucky and landed into a data science job and decided I hated it. So it was important for me, I think, as part of this process to figure out if this was actually a move that made sense. And
Mm.
yeah, you're right, taking that step and putting myself into that uncomfortable situation it was an uncomfortable situation, but it was limited, right? It was only for 6 weeks. It was only Philadelphia, New York. It wasn't moving to California and accepting a 1 year contract. So it was kind of like a little baby step towards seeing if this was a good fit.
Yeah, a baby step, but a significant one. That round trip from New York to Philly for 6 weeks, it hits the pocket, and it's time. It's time. But I'm glad you said that because I think sometimes, at least when I'm working with graduate students and with faculty who are considering whether they want to remain in the professoriate, it's always the question of feeling like there's a huge leap that all of a sudden happens. And when in fact, at least from even what I hear in your story, is it's incremental and it's building upon information that you receive and refining your ideas. So you're never kind of thrust into a space that you didn't want or you didn't have some information about, at least some information about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there are probably people who do it that way, but I think for me in my process, that was not something that I would necessarily have been comfortable with. So it was very important for me to try to find those kind of incremental steps that I could take and reassess at every point along the way. Like, all right, is this working? Is this actually something I want to do?
So tell me about the first job, the job offer that you ended up taking. Like, what was that like? And that kind of, now we've got all this information and you're applying. Um, Tell me about the first job offer and how it's helped to launch your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first job offer was a data science role at Comcast. And I remember coaching also being super crucial to that whole process as well, because this was really the first like big girl job offer I'd ever received, right? And I had no idea how to approach negotiating that or having those conversations, and just again, like really basic questions that I didn't have answers for. And so I remember you being a really crucial help getting through that particular process. Um, yeah, a really whole learning experience around just reading job offers and accepting them that we went through together. Um, but yeah, so I accepted the data science position at Comcast, and I again, I had some expectations for what working in a big corporate environment looks like, but also a lot of big questions. I didn't know what to expect from that environment, or how uh, working as a researcher or an analyst in a corporate environment might differ from doing similar types of work in an academic environment. So I think that that first role at Comcast was really crucial for answering some of those questions, kind of figuring out, all right, how do I translate my skills from being a grad student to being an industry professional? What does it actually look like to work within a team in these environments, coming from
Mm,
a space where, I would occasionally co-author papers, and I had a group of other students that I was in grad school with that we would bounce ideas off of, but really being more used to working in isolation, to solving problems on my own and seeing things all the way through to the result by myself. So yeah, making that mental shift to being part of a team or being part of a larger organization was also a really important learning, I think, from that first role.
mhm. No, it's really interesting because it's shifting out of the culture as well, right? I mean, there's a difference between being in academia, being a graduate student, and then being in corporate and being a professional. Like there's multiple transitions happening at that time. Um, so in terms of the um, if you could say a little bit about the negotiation, just to kind of help to make it what I mean, why this seems like an obvious question, maybe, I don't know, but like, why not take the offer? Like it was more than what you're expecting to get anyway, right? And from the initial conversations, but what was happening in there for you that was like, you know what, I deserve to negotiate this and I get to show up and ask for something else. Like, and what were some of the things that you negotiated?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I wish I could remember better, kind of where my mindset was then. I would
That
say,
means you did a good job. That means you did a really good job because if you were not happy with it, you would remember.
yeah. No, I mean, when you phrase it that way, it's a great question. I think it definitely gets at something that rings true for the kind of mental space that I was in by the end of grad school, um, where maybe, this wasn't my first choice career. This wasn't what I thought I was going to do. So, I could definitely see being in a place where you would just want to take whatever offer is given to you. Like, all right, yes, I got it. This is my
Yeah.
out. This is my chance. Don't second guess it. Just take it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I honestly, I can't remember any specific thing that helped me shift from that kind of mindset to one of being able to kind of sit back, think about it, digest what was on the paper in front of me, and consider if it actually was meeting my expectations for what I wanted as my next step in life. Um, but I think it was probably just having taken that time to work through this process with you
Mm,
and feeling kind of empowered to ask more questions and not just jump at the first thing that presented itself.
mm. Wow, that's pretty powerful. I'm glad that you felt empowered by the process because I think for me, personally, my goal is that the information transfer that's happening is something that also stays with you. That, it's one thing to do it for the first job, but then of course you'll continue to shift roles, if not also, organizations. And so that empowering feeling, like being able to just continue to grow with that, as you grow, and you've already shifted to another organization, so it's just really exciting to hear the layering that's happened, that you get to continue to build from, so it's exciting.
It is.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the time today. I appreciate being able to hear about where you are. And maybe just to wrap for everyone else, you talked about the Comcast position in data science, NLP. Tell us a little bit about then where you are right now, and maybe if some of the first position was a bit of a transition to get here for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, Comcast was my first position. I'm currently in my third position post grad school at this point. And a lot of the skills and kind of, I would say, specialization within data science that I am in currently did kind of originate in that Comcast job. So a lot of the things that I'm doing day to day in my role now are kind of similar or rooted in some of the skills that I gained in that first job. So NLP stands for natural language processing. And in this case, it's sort of a fancy way of saying that I work with text-based data. So a lot of the work I do is helping companies really digest the customer service communications that happen either via email or via text and derive insights to help make business decisions, help make even just the customer service process go more smoothly. Um, so yeah, it's I think another way that that first Comcast job really helped me develop as a professional was understanding not only the skills that I was bringing from academia, but how to kind of interweave some of my research interests from academia, kind of that
Mm-hmm.
linguistic text-based data that I like to work with,
Yeah.
into an actual role that exists in industry and is needed by a lot of different companies.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Hillary. I appreciate it. And it's a beautiful day outside. So just the fact that you're taking the time to be here rather than taking a walk and doing something else that you could be doing in the time, I so appreciate it. And I'm just really excited for your success and just where your journey is taking you. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you. And you were such a big part of my success and where I am now that I'm more than happy to take the time to talk with you about it.
Thank you.